Alright, so the Abominable Snowmen animation recently. Do you guys hear that? Oh my god, it's a great big hairy beastie! No, it's just Scoogie. So yet another animation has made it to our screens, which I'm super excited about. The Abominable Snowmen is one of those stories I've been looking forward to for quite some time. It's one of those stories that has such a crazy atmosphere, and I think because it's been missing, it's one of those ones where it's like, I wonder what would have been. Especially since season 5 is very much the monster season of classic Doctor Who, where you've got stuff like The Web of Fear and Fury from the Deep, with these really dark and tense and mysterious episodes of Doctor Who. And The Abominable Snowmen is one of those stories where they try something completely new with the show. And although I think the story has its faults, I think it has a lot of successes too. But today we're mainly going to be discussing the 2022 animation of the story rather than the actual story itself. So this is mine and Scoogie's review of The Abominable Snowmen. Did you like it? There's the video done. The Doctor and their friends, Jamie and Victoria, land in the Himalayas with the purpose of visiting a Tibetan monastery that the Doctor went to many years ago. Unfortunately for them, they are thrown into a mystery filled of giant yetis and a mysterious voice coming from the inner sanctum. The Doctor is about to meet a threat like no other he had met before, the Great Intelligence. My general thoughts on this story is that I think it has a great atmosphere, but of course it is 6 episodes, so I think it's far too long. And there is a lot of padding in this story, which makes it very hard to watch in one sitting. But of course, this story wasn't designed to watch in one big viewing. It was supposed to be seen weekly, episode by episode. So of course, when they make a new animation, like in 2022, we're thrown into viewing the story how it never should have been seen, which is all in one block, and also animated, for that fact. This animation was done by the same team who did Fury from the Deep and Galaxy 4. So the character designs are very similar, and it's a similar approach in the way of the hyper-detailed backgrounds and the more simplistic character designs. This is something I was quite critical of with Galaxy 4. I felt as if it was a bit too detailed, the backdrop. But I feel like a lot of my complaints from Galaxy 4 are completely gone by the time we hit this story. I think this is Big Finish Creative's absolute best work so far. So because I had a few criticisms about Galaxy 4 and Fury from the Deep, I was concerned going in. So I decided to have my expectations really, really low. I was like, okay, let's expect it's going to be like Galaxy 4, which it didn't really resonate with me. I feel like with this story, most of the criticisms I had are now completely gone. We're far away from Fury from the Deep's long arms. The majority of the time, everything seems to be in proportion and looks quite good. I think the animation of the characters itself is evolving over time as well. It seems to be a lot more varied, and they seem to be filling the gaps really interestingly. It's clear that the team has learnt so much from Fury from the Deep, and it's such a joy to see them at their absolute peak. So I think The Abominable Snowmen is such a great way to send off this series. Although I do prefer the team who do The Evil of the Daleks and The Power of the Daleks, Macra Terror. I think their animations have a bit more of a polish that I like. It seems a bit more stylized in the way it's shot. With Big Finish Creative, they have a different approach that doesn't resonate as much with me, but I did enjoy this animation. There seems to be a little bit of a different approach to this animation than previous ones, which I think the purists would probably enjoy a bit more. If you're one of those people who prefers the animation to follow the camera script and be as accurate as the original production was, I think you might enjoy this animation a little bit more than others. Although it's not accurate 100% by any means, and we'll go into detail about that a bit later. But the way it is shot, if we can really use that term, is very much more like studio style. A lot of the scenes are purely done in one-shots, that is just a stable, wide shot, and that's it. There's barely any close-ups or mid-shots in some scenes, which I think to modern audiences will make this story a bit hard to watch at points, especially because this story is so overdrawn, it is so padded, and there's so many empty silences. But there is some really beautiful shots in this one. I think they really put a lot of effort into the day and night cycles, about different types of weather changes, and it makes the whole story feel so much more alive. And it also just looks really, really beautiful. Like some of the skies are just stunning. When it comes to set designs and that, it's very close to the originals, but they are bigger. and they're expanded. And I think one of the places where it looks the best is probably the monastery. They've added a whole new level to it, and it makes it clear that some scenes are set during the day and some are at night. Whereas in the original black and white production, you couldn't really tell if it was a day or night depending on it because it was such a darkly lit set, even though it was supposed to be during the day and open air. I also think you get a better sense of the layout of the monastery way more than you did with the original production. It feels a whole lot bigger, but it also feels accurate to the original, that it's not distracting. For Fury from the Deep, a lot of people complained that the sets were made too big, and I sort of agree with that one, that it doesn't really follow the original design much at all. But with this one, it's very clear they've taken the same design elements and just translated it into bigger and more practical looking sets. I saw some people talk about how they've made the locations look more like Tibet rather than Wales, which I think was the correct decision to make. I think they found a really good balance between the two. I read in Doctor Who magazine that they did some research about the Himalayas and they saw that it's not always covered in snow, and a lot of the time it did look like the original production with grass and just patches of snow. And I think they found that perfect balance and it looks so nice. But also because the location stuff looks so good, you wish that the original production existed still because you knew that original footage looked so nice. I think the most controversial change was the design of PADMASAMBHAVA. Oh, I did not say that right. PADMASAMBHAVA. PADMASAMBHAVA. I think I'm butchering it now. Alright, I'm not even going to bother. But the design of his character is completely different. And it doesn't match the rest of the character designs, which I'm a bit confused about. In the original production, it was an aging old man, which made sense for the character because he was around for 300 years and he was getting really old and scary looking. Whereas they went with a more cartoony look. When I first saw it, I was like, oh, I don't like this. And I really, really did not like it. But as time grew on, you got used to it and it wasn't as distracting as I thought it would be. I still think it was a really odd choice, but ultimately they turned him into more of a monster than the original character, which I think makes him a little bit less sympathetic. I'm not going to go into too many details of the story because I don't want to spoil it for you. But yeah, I think it was an odd choice. But I think the strength of animation in this story really comes out in the final confrontation, and they've really elevated it to the next level. And it also honors the original script. It gives the villain more power and more presence, and it makes for such a fantastic scene, which had me really gripped, and I was paying attention to every single little thing, even though at some points during the animation I was falling asleep. But yeah, talking about falling asleep, I think it's important to take breaks when you're watching this story. I think this is one of those six-parters that is very difficult to watch in one sitting. I think one of the main reasons this one is so difficult to watch is because it doesn't have any music. There's no film score behind it at all, which in some ways really elevates the tension because you can really focus on the ambience of it. You've got the strong winds coming through the monastery and the sound of the Himalayas, and it's so beautiful. But at some points, it does feel very, very dull. And it's hard to keep your focus the whole time. But I think that purely comes down to the original story, the original audio. I don't think it's got anything to do with the animators. I think they've done a really good job with this one. I think another reason why I was so drowsy watching this one is because I know the story so well. Because years ago I did my own photo reconstruction animation hybrid thing. And so I knew each plot point beat by beat. I knew all the shots. But I think from visualizing it in my head to seeing it animated was a really pleasant experience. Because sometimes you can imagine it being better than it actually was, but I think they've done a really good job at actually bringing it to life, how I think it would have originally, but maybe a little bit better. I'm really surprised that this animation has that same tension that the original had, which I wasn't expecting at all. I was expecting going into it and being like, this is going to be a bit cartoony and a bit silly. But it did have the atmosphere the original had. Maybe not as good as the original would have been, because of course you're comparing live action to animation. Of course live action's gonna have more atmosphere and tension. But I think they did a really good job at making it work. And even though I've said that PADMASAMBHAVA looks a bit silly at points, during that final confrontation, there is a lot of power in what he is saying, and it's really, really effective. I think the Yeti in animation were a little bit disappointing to me, but that's because I love the original ones so much. They're so cuddly, and I wouldn't care if it attacked me. But I think they did a really good job at making them a bit more tougher than the original counterparts. There's a scene where they're destroying a Buddha statue and it's like they've crumbled it. Whereas in the original one, you know it would have looked a bit wonky. So I think they may have lost a little bit of their cuteness factor, but I think they've really upped their strength. So it really depends on what you're looking for in your Yeti. One criticism that I've seen online is that because episode 2 of The Abominable Snowmen does exist in the BBC's archive, which is also included on the Blu-ray and DVD releases, is that the animation doesn't match episode 2 very closely. So if you wanted to watch episodes 1, 3, 4, 5 and 6 alongside the live action episode 2, they don't match up very closely. It's not something that surprises me at this point because they made it very clear that they're happy to change things depending if the episode survives or not. And it doesn't overly bother me because when I watch these stories, I watch all of the animated ones. I don't watch the live action one. Purely because I think it is distracting. And also because I've seen the live action one a million times and I want to see something a little bit different. And I understand that. I think it's a fair criticism. You know, you're watching the live action episode and then all of a sudden the locations look different and all of that. And I think a lot of that criticism comes from the original intention of these animations. Years ago when they were on DVD, the animations were made to fill the gap, not the other way around. And I think a lot of people think that we're prioritizing this brand new story rather than honoring the original production. And I think it's all fair criticism. I don't know where I sit. I'm happy for a bit of exaggeration, but I think it comes to a limit. Where is the line? Finding that line is very difficult, and I don't think they've ever got it 100% right because everyone's gonna have different opinions about it. I think Evil of the Daleks is the one where they've got it exactly right. You know, it's honoring the original designs, but it looks like there's a bit more money in it. And I feel like they've tried to do that with this animation as well. So in the original production, all the Tibetan monks were played by white people. So in this one, they've decided to change the character designs to be Asian, which I think is the right thing to do. It's something the director Gary Russell felt very strongly about, and I think it was probably the right decision. This is a 2022 production. This is not a 1960s production again. I've heard people throw around the term revisionism or that it's erasing history, but I don't think that's necessarily the case. Because even on the same release, we have the surviving episode 2, and of course the telesnaps as well, which depict the original actors. And I think because the animation team had made this decision, it kind of felt like we're starting a conversation again. We're talking about it. And we're addressing past issues that Doctor Who had. And by highlighting these issues, we learn from them and we don't make those mistakes again. I think it's important that we celebrate the episodes that we love, whilst also highlighting the negative facts that they have. Because Doctor Who is an ancient show, it's been on for nearly 60 years now, and it's gonna have moments where it's racist, sexist, homophobic, bigoted, and it's important to be aware of it so we can stop those things happening in the future. And I think to ignore it would just be adding on to the problem. And look, because of this animation, we're discussing it right now, and we're thinking about it and how it affects us every single day. But you know, I don't want to leave this video on a sour note, but it is so unfortunate that this is going to be one of the last animations we get for quite some time. It's another example of the animation team really hitting their stride, and now it's over. Because you know, I think the same thing happened with Planet 55. You know, the Reign of Terror was a bit wonky, the 10th Planet was good, but the Moon Base was excellent. And then that was it. You know, and then the BBC Studios team, you know, Power of the Daleks, Macra Terror was incredible, Faceless Ones, Evil of the Daleks was the best yet, and then it's over again. You know, because these animations have brought me and so many other people so much joy. Even when we weren't as happy with some releases, like The Web of Fear, you could still feel there was so much love in these projects. You could tell that the people involved with it really, really cared. And I'm so upset that this is the last we're gonna see them for quite some time. And there's so many missing stories that are dying for animation. Could you imagine the Daleks Master Plan animated? Or stories like Marco Polo, or The Massacre. There's so many lost stories that so many Doctor Who fans have never experienced before. Because let's be real, telesnap reconstructions are very difficult to watch. I've had a lot of practice, so I know how to sit down and watch them, but it's not the same as watching an animation. It's not the same as watching the original production. So hopefully, this is not the end, because we just don't know what the future of Doctor Who looks like. Who knows? Maybe Ncuti Gatwa is going to be a massive success and Doctor Who's going to skyrocket into popularity bigger than it's ever been before. I would love that to happen. If that happens, I don't know. It's an old show, it's been around for a very long time, it's a British institution. But will we see the resurgence of missing episode animations? I don't know. But I am so thankful for every single one we've gotten so far. I think this story deserves a place in Doctor Who's history. I think this is a story that attempted something completely different than the show ever tried before. It was more supernatural rather than alien. And the fact that this story is so different to anything that came before it, it's pretty clear why the writers were asked to come back that same season and write The Web of Fear. It was clear that these writers had tapped into something completely different and redefined Doctor Who forever. So I think this story is important, and I think you should give it a go. I think this animation is a great way of watching the story. It's definitely replaced the reconstruction for me. I am so very happy with it. And I'm so happy that I just enjoyed this one. I had a day off, I just sat down and I watched it. I had breaks, I had little gaps, and I came back and watched it again. And it was nice to just enjoy something. That sounds really sad. But yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think of the animation. Did you love it? Did you hate it? How do you feel about it? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Josh Nares YouTube channel.